Armageddon has arrived, and this is how I got started.
Welcome to civilization.
The first step for me was obviously tearing open that box and having a look at what was inside. And I love to take my time with this, and I let my mind kind of go to all the places and kit bashes that I want to create with what's available. But this is really me just getting to grips with what's on offer and starting to piece together what I might want to be doing in the future. The box comes with some lovely decals that I wanted to take advantage of. Plenty of inspiration from the new Operation Imperator book that comes in the box, and I normally start by flicking straight to the photos to get a feel of what it is that I might want to do myself. I flipped straight to this battle scene with the Orcs and Space Marines, and I was like, yes, this got me pumped. So, looking at the assembly guide for all the miniatures, I started to really get an understanding in my head of what I want to achieve. And with the Space Marines and the Orcs, I was really wanting to go for a more grounded approach. I wanted them to be weathered. I wanted them to be angry. I wanted them to feel like they'd been at war for hundreds of years. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was use this tactical squad from the Horus Heresy to steal the shoulder pauldrons off, but I later realized and forgot that it was push fit and I wouldn't be able to do that. So I had to settle just for the backpacks. So I swapped out all the backpacks with these Heresy backpacks, which I just think look a little bit more intimidating. And I swapped out the Sergeant with a Vexilla as well. For the Captain, I did swap out the shield. I've never been a fan of those shields that come with the 40k models, so I wanted to do something different. And with the Orcs, I didn't want any cute little gubbins, any little creatures. I wanted them to feel angry and menacing. So I went about removing all of these little sidekicks from most of the armor, which I'm sure some people will be very disappointed in me for doing. I also just went in with some milliput, and where I had to cut away some of the bigger creatures, I fixed it just to cover up any gaps. I did put together a bit of a board of ideas for what I wanted to work through. I wanted some ideas for pale orc skin flesh tones. So I just scoured Pinterest basically and put together a little bit of a collage of the look I was trying to go for. I knew I wanted to do Blood Angels at this stage, but again, I wanted to test myself and do something a little bit different to what everyone else might be doing. So this was me just really trying to get an understanding in my own head about what I wanted to achieve. In the end, I ended up settling for Angels Sanguine, and having read some of the lore, one of the interesting things was the fact that these guys don't remove their helmets. So I thought, fantastic, someone who likes army painting and wants to get things on the table quickly, this is perfect for me. I don't have to worry about painting any faces. They're like the Mandalorians of 40k. So I was like, yes, these guys are for me. And it also gave me the opportunity to try something new, which is this two-tone armor scheme, which I hadn't tried before. So I was super excited to give this a go. And with all in that in mind, I thought today we'd go through how I created my test models for my force in the Armageddon box. So today I wanted to focus on this Angels Sanguine, which I am incredibly proud of. I think he looks wonderful, and I'll go through the process of how I got him ready for the tabletop. But this was the orc that I also painted up, and I knew that, you know, I pretty much, by the time I finished this guide, decided that yes, pale skin orcs is exactly what I want to do, and I just love how this guy turned out. And he was actually painted up super quick. I think it took me, you know, under an hour actually, and it was a lot of the heavy lifting with the airbrush, but I don't think you can tell. I think it looks like I've spent a lot longer on this miniature than I actually did, and he just turned out so lovely. So definitely the scheme I'm going to be using for my orc part of the box. But as I said, today we're going to focus on this guy, and I'm going to show you how you can paint up your Angels Sanguine to a tabletop level, nice and quick and simple. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and let's paint. So to prepare this mini, I've just primed with AK black, which is my favorite black at the moment, and I've left the head separate as well. We're going to be focusing on the red armor first because I want this to be the dominant color. And when we're blacking out half of the model, the black, because it's so dark, is really easy to get nice clear definition and to paint out with brush so that we don't spoil any of the red armor side of the model in the future. So all I'm going to do is base coat with dark Prussian blue, and this is going to be our foundation for the red, but I'm going to be using this all over the model, including the head, and this is going to build a really deep, dark base coat and shadow color, which is going to contrast nicely with the red tones that we're going to layer over the top. So just make sure we've got a really opaque finish, and we've covered the entire model with this dark Prussian blue. Okay, and we've got that dark Prussian blue layer established, and that's all in the nooks and crannies, into the recesses and shadows. So next we're going to be building up our first pre-shade before we apply our red. So for this I'm using titanium white ink through the airbrush, and I'm just going to put this on the spots where I know it's going to catch the most light. Now I'm going to pay special attention to the left side of the model because that's the model that's going to be painted red, and not worry too much about the right side. But I'm just going to be hitting this in all the areas that I want to draw attention until I've got a result that I think looks great. And with that, our white pre-shade is complete. Now I did go into Overpilot and do the back of the left leg for some reason, which is going to be black anyway. So ignore that, you don't need to do that. But I've just made sure that on this side of the model, I've hit all the areas that I want to stand out. For the helmet, I've just done the white kind of to the front right side, just to draw attention, as there is going to be half of this blacked out as well. Now, next color I'm going to be using is Baal Red, which is a contrast paint from Citadel. And I'm going to be shooting this over the left side of the model, over all that highlight that we've just laid down, trying again to leave some of that blue in the shadow. So take your time with this and do it in layers, thin layers first, allowing it to dry before reapplying, because we don't want any spidering. We want this to go on nice and smooth. And the more precise you can be now, the better the end result. So take your time with this and just slowly build up this color until you've got a nice, vibrant red. Now, I love this contrast paint. I think it's got some really lovely pigment density, and it gives you this really luscious, deep red, which is still very vibrant, which is sometimes hard to get from red colors. Okay, and for our last step, the secret to vibrant red, I'm going to be using some fluorescent red from Pro Acryl. And I'm just going to be watering this down about 2 parts thinner to Pro Acryl fluorescent red, and just applying this over the top of the highest points just to build even more vibrancy. So with that done, we've got this really lovely bright red armor, nice and vibrant from above. We've still got that shadow into the recesses and underneath the arm, leg. It kind of goes a bit of like a corn red color from the thin layers of red that we're applying over the blue, which works perfectly, but you still get a bit of a subtle blue hint in the shadows, which is exactly what we want. Now, the next not so fun step is going to be blacking out the right side of the miniature. So there's no cheat code to this. You just need a really steady hand and a brush with a nice fine point. And we're basically just going straight down the middle of the model and trying to draw as straight as line as possible. And it's okay to come back in and neaten this up afterwards. But once you've got that middle line established, it's then just a case of painting out the rest of the black until you've got a nice opaque finish. So steady hand, don't have too much caffeine before this is always good, and just try and get as straight a line as possible down the center of the miniature. So as you can see, we've blacked out the other half of the model, and you should have something that looks like this. So look, the line in the middle is not perfect, but it's fine. We're going to be using an oil pin wash later, and it's going to really obscure the fact that the line in the middle might not be exactly straight. So don't get too caught up on making it perfect. I've done the helmet here as well. And again, it's probably a little bit further on the left than it is the right, but it still reads half and half. We're going to apply that oil, and it's going to hide all evils. Next stage here, I'm going to be taking a little bit of masking tape, and all I'm going to be doing is putting this pretty much exactly down halfway of the model, trying to be as accurate as possible, and then making sure that this runs straight over the top as well, just like so. All we're really doing is making sure that when we do this next airbrush highlight, that we're going to be hitting predominantly the black side of the armor. If there's a little bit of overspray, it's absolutely fine. You're not going to be able to tell. And the first color I'm using here is Tenebrous Grey, which is a bit of a kind of a purpley grey, purpley grey black. And I'm just going to be hitting the highest points from above, including the chest, knee pads, hands, pauldron and arm, and establishing the first highlight. I'm then going to turn the model over and repeat on the backpack, adding masking tape to the back just to protect the red. I'm also going to do exactly the same thing on the helmet as well. So just take your time and be careful, and try and spray away from the red armor so that the overspray goes away from the model rather than coming in underneath the masking tape and staining the work we've already done. Okay, we've now applied that Tenebrous Grey, and it is a very subtle difference to the black armor. So it's still the deepest black in the shadows, but it's this very kind of petroleum black, this purpley black, which is very subtle. But again, I'm playing in the realms of the color wheel here, so it's going to be contrasting nicely those subtle colors with the red armor panels right next to them. I'm then going to mix in grey blue, so it's about 50-50 grey blue to Tenebrous Grey, and this is where I'm going to be defining the panels in a little bit more detail. So taking your time with this step, and I'm going to be hitting like the top of the chest, top of the knees, round the hand, and just making this highlight a little bit tighter than what we've done before. I've then mixed another couple of drops of grey blue into the airbrush mix from before, just to apply one final highlight. So we want to be even tighter with these ones, and only hitting where we want our brightest highlight to be, like the hand, top of the chest, and the pauldron. All right, and with that armor base coating done, and I've attached the head now, we've got a result that looks like this. And I think it looks wonderful. I love this two-tone armor. It's the first time I've done an armor recipe like this, and I just think it adds so much interest. I think it's fantastic. I always also use that last highlight to just do the top of the bolter, because I'm going to shade this with black ink later. It's going to define all the edges for me and make it a very quick way to finish that bolter to a nice standard. So all I'm going to do now off camera is I'm going to gloss varnish the miniature. I'm going to use a Citadel Ard Coat for this, and then I'm going to apply some decals and re-gloss the miniature so those decals are nice and flush, ready for the oil stage. And I will be back once that is done. So the marine has been gloss varnished, decals applied, and I've applied a coat of the Ard coat over the top to seal those decals. Now before I apply oils, I'm just going to block out some of the metallics. So I'm just using Jet Exhaust from Vallejo, and all I'm doing is painting in the gun barrels, the vents on the backpack, and any of the silver metallic areas such as the grenade around the belt as well. So I'm just going to quickly do those now, and then after this we are ready to apply some oils. And with those metallics blocked in, we're now going to do the pin wash. So not doing anything crazy here, I'm just simply taking Aptalon Black mixed with mineral spirits, and I want a nice dark clearly defined armor panel. So not messing around with any other color, I'm just taking the Aptalon Black thinned with mineral spirits and touching it to the areas where I want this to flood into and build up some definition. Now if you get a little bit of overspill on the armor panel there, it's fine, because the oils allow us to go in and clean up later without damaging the paintwork that we've done so far. And once I've finished applying all the oils everywhere, I'm going to allow it to dry for about 30 minutes. I'm then going to come back in with some makeup sponges and just tidy up any areas like that bit on the abs there that I've got a little bit over. Okay, so I've gone away for about 45 minutes, had a coffee, come back, and the oil is pretty much dry across the whole miniature. So all I'm going to do is take a little makeup sponge. You can get these on Amazon, dirt cheap, and you can get a big bag of them. And I'm just going to very slightly damp this in mineral spirits, and I'm just going to go across and clean up everywhere where I don't want the oil to be. So you can see that on here it's kind of spilled onto the flatter surfaces. There's a little bit on the chest underneath the crest there as well. So I'm just going to go around and basically pick out the areas where I just want to tidy this up. So I finished cleaning up the oils, and I've given the model a 50-50 mix of ultra matte varnish to satin varnish, just to tie everything together. I like the 50-50 mix because you get the benefits of the matte, but you also get a bit of the shine coming through of the satin as well, and I think it gives a really nice result. I did use Grim Brown just to block in the leather pouches and straps. That's all I'm going to do for the pouches and straps. I'm not too concerned about highlighting up the levers at this stage, because I want these guys to be pretty grim, pretty dark. So it's not going to be something that people are going to particularly notice on the gaming table. The next stage is the kind of gold, coppery bronze. So it took me a while to find a recipe I liked for this, because I am going to do some verdigris later. So I did want a coppery kind of bronze color. And in the end, I settled on a mix of ancient copper by Vallejo. I'm using a decayed metal from Metal Alchemy, the scale 75 series, and I'm using Moonstone from Metal Alchemy scale 75 to highlight up as well. So I think I'm happy with this this kind of coppery bronze recipe. It kind of reads the way I want it to, and it's going to go nicely with the verdigris later. So I'm just going to start blocking out all of those elements with this color, making sure to be careful not to get them in any of the armor panels that we've done previously. Because it's going to be much harder at this stage to tidy up any mistakes. But I really like the result of this color. I think it's right in the middle of kind of that copper to gold, because obviously gold doesn't oxidize in the same way coppers and bronzes do. So I did want to get this color right so it read correctly against the reference images that I had collected prior to this project. Okay, and so for the fun part, I've got phthalo green, I've got turquoise lights, and I've got Winsor & Newton. I'll list these in the description, but what I've done is just mix down a very thin oil mix on top of this
spray paint lid, but what you want is this mixture to not be too diluted. We don't want it to flood everywhere, but we do want it to still be able to sink into some of the recesses. So I'm just mixing this with some white mineral spirits that I've got off camera, and I think this is a pretty good consistency. We can always come back and add a little bit more if necessary, but I'm going to start with the Aquila, and I'm just going to give this a pretty liberal coat all over, making sure that it sinks directly into those recesses. Now, what I'm also going to be doing is I'm just going to be dragging down the model and letting this pool in the areas below the crest. Now, as you can see, this is looking a bit messy, but we can go back and clean it up. Now, I do want some of these lines to be a little bit thicker, so I'm going to go back to my oil mix, make a thicker consistency, and get it to a point where I can really draw these lines on a little bit stronger, because I do want to give the appearance that the verdigris over many years of war has kind of started to leak down onto the armor and create these lovely bright verdigris dripping lines. So once I'm happy with the placement of the verdigris, I'm then going to wick off my brush in the mineral spirits and then come back in and start to feather out the areas and the drips. Now you can play around with this as much as you want. You could even remove everything you've done so far with mineral spirits and a sponge and start again if you want. It's very forgiving, so don't worry too much, but we want it to look quite natural. So you want to feather out these hard lines, but as you can see, I'm moving my brush in the direction that I want the drips to be flowing, so that it looks natural, and it's as I said, it's happened after many years of being on the battlefield in all conditions. So take your time and just play around. That's the fun of oils. You can play around until you're happy with the result. Okay, so I've got to a stage where I'm pretty happy with the result. I'm now just going to be mixing in a little bit of the titanium white into our previous mix. And all I'm going to be doing with this is adding a few little spots to the very inner part of the crest, just where there's, I guess, fresher or older, I guess, verdigris that's built up. And what this will do is it will just draw attention back to the center of the crest and the chest, which is exactly what we want. And once that's had a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to come back in with a sponge with a tiny bit of mineral spirits, and I'm literally just going to be tapping this to the crest, pulling the verdigris off some of the higher points to now re-expose the bronze underneath. I think what you're left with is a really lovely effect. Now, credit to Fletcher for the verdigris drippy thing. I hadn't seen anyone do it before, but when I saw him do it on his recent Blood Angels, I really wanted to give it a go, and I think it just adds so much character, and it really gives the appearance of age to the model, and that it's been on the battlefield for a long time. So yeah, a great tip, and I think it looks fantastic. Now the next stage here is one of the harder parts, and that is going to be blocking out the eye lenses. So for this I'm using Ice Yellow from AK, a nice fine tipped brush, and I'm just going to take my time making sure I get a real opaque lens, and waiting for each part to dry before reapplying paint, because we don't want to build up any texture in the lens itself, seeing as this is going to be a main focal point for the head and for the model.
Now once we've got those eye lenses blocked in, I'm also going to do a very thin line underneath the lens, just around the ridge of the lens. And this is going to be our OSL from the lens itself. And I did the rest of that off camera just because, as you can imagine, it's pretty tricky to to do that because I needed to get nice and close to the model, and it took a bit of time, but I'm happy with the result now. Now all we're going to do is use Warped Lightning, which is a Citadel contrast paint straight out of the bottle, and we are going to coat in the eye lens. And all I'm doing is filling in the eye lens and then dragging away from the front towards the back, so that some of that ice yellow shows through at the front side of the helmet. So it looks like that's kind of where the eyeball is, and where it's being he's looking out of. Very simple lens. Now you could leave the eye lenses here, but I'm just going to go back in with some ice yellow mixed with frog green, and I'm just going to re-establish that inner lens so that it's nice and bright. Okay, so I've now got him based, and he is complete, and I think he looks wonderful. Really enjoyed working towards these Angels Sanguine. This is obviously a test miniature for the rest of my Armageddon box. It actually wasn't the first test I did. The first one was this guy here, where I actually used wine red as the red color, which I wasn't quite sure about. It was a little bit dull for me. I much prefer the vibrancy of the new version. But let me know what you think. I'm still undecided. The Space Marines half of the box was probably the part that I was least excited to paint, but it is the one that I wanted to just get paint on quickly so that I could move on to the Orcs and start playing around with some different variations of skin tone. But I wanted the look and feel of this project to be more into the grimdark, very weathered. I wanted it to feel serious and grounded, and I've kind of gone with that approach with my Orc test model as well. I will probably cover this guy in a later video, but this is the first test for the Orc side of the box, so I have decided to go with pale Orcs, and I was really happy actually with how this first guy turned out. I think he looks pretty cool, and like I said at the beginning, I wanted the Orcs to feel menacing. I wanted them to feel like something that people should genuinely be afraid of. I didn't want any of these kind of luminous hulking bodies running around the battlefield. I wanted them to feel a little bit more terrifying. You know, removing all the little nubbins and the cute little creatures that come with the box, I think was the first step, but I definitely wanted the final result to feel menacing, and I really love this pale skin tone. And this is really just magenta with some layered up kind of blue grays until I get this result. So I'll probably cover this recipe in a not too far future as a bit of a follow-up to this first video, but a pretty easy result to achieve, and I painted this guy up in a couple of hours, and I think he looks great. So really happy with how he's come together, and I'm very excited to be painting the Orcs next. But yeah, I hope you're all enjoying your Armageddon boxes. It's obviously hobby Christmas for all of us. Love to know what you're working on in the comments down below. Please let me know what you think of this Angels Sanguine recipe, and what you think of the first test model for my Orcs. As I said, I'm still on the fence, and the beauty about this hobby is that we can spend the time to go through these things, do tests. At the end of the day, we can always just repaint things, right? So I really enjoy this kind of discovery stage of the project, and trying to get the foundations of the army right.
because I hate the idea of having to come back and redo things in the future. But yeah, that was a bit of my my long-winded approach to what I enjoy about getting started with a new project. I hope you're enjoying yours. As I said, please leave a comment down below. I appreciate all the support so far. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see some more content. And I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next one.